Right, good evening and welcome to Mishnah Mastery. This week we are going to try and tackle chapter 9 of Masechet Shabbat and chapter 10 of the very same Masechet Shabbat. We are going to be blitzing through this at breakneck speeds, so strap in and let's get cracking. Let's get it up on the screen here. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, come join us on Zoom. We'd love to see you. We've got thousands tuning in on Zoom already. We should be able to cram in a couple more. All right, can everybody see on the screen? I'm going to type that as resounding yes. Thank you very much indeed. All right, so here we go. Mishnah test, Mishnah 9. Here it comes. For those of us who remember at the end of last week's shir, at the end of the chapter 8, we saw this concept of even though there was no proof for something per se in the Torah, there was still a hint to it in the words of the verses. So we kind of continue with that Mishnaic structure. So the first couple of things that we are going to see are not necessarily strictly to do with the halachas of Shabbos, but it follows, the structure of the Mishnah follows on with that Zecher Ledavar, a hint in the words of a verse. So we're going to see the first four Mishnahs. They don't have anything to do necessarily with Shabbat, but they follow along with that structure. So here comes Mishnah Aleph. Says the Mishnah, Amar Rabbi Akiva, Minayin la'avodat kachavim shemitama kamasa kanida. Where does it say in the Torah, where do we see a source that when it comes to avodah zarah, an item of idol worship, that you can convey tumah? A person can become tameh just by carrying it. You see, there's an opinion that holds that you can contract tumah from a statue of idol worship by touching it, but Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that you can also contract tumah by carrying it. So let's say you've got it in a bag and you're carrying the bag. According to Rabbi Akiva, you would actually be you would contract tumah, you would become impure by doing that, just like if you were to carry somebody who was menstruating. So he says, I've got a source, got a source for this in the book of Isaiah. Shneimar, it says in the book of Isaiah, chapter 30, verse 22, Tizraim kamo davar, you shall cast them, meaning the idols, away, like a menstruous woman. Say, Tomar Lo, you will say, get out! So he learns from this, Man nida metama b'masa, just like a menstruous woman can defile, can convey tumah by being carried, af avodah zara metama b'masa, so too an item of idol worship can also be conveying tumah through carrying it. So that is the hint that Rabbi Akiva learns out in that particular area of halacha. And then it follows on. Minayin, Mishnah base. Minayin l'sfina shehi tahara. From where do we know that a boat is tahor, is pure? What do we mean by this? So it would seem that a boat itself cannot become tameh, cannot become impure. And that seems to be because it is a vessel that could not be carried when it is full and when it is empty. So again, we're not going to necessarily see a direct source for this, right? The verses that we're quoting are not coming from the 5 books of Moses, which means that there is no kind of direct commandment, no direct mitzvah in the Torah. So what we're finding is supports for the halachic position by way of the wording in particular verses. So how do we know that a ship is tahor? Shneimar, as it says in the book of Proverbs, in the book of Mishlei, chapter 30, verse 19. Derech aniyah b'lev yam. The way of a ship is in the midst of the sea. And since water is not mekabel tumah, so too a boat, therefore, is not mikabel tumah, and therefore it is pure. Then the Mishnah asks, Minayin la'aruga. Anybody remember gladiators? No? No one remembers John Fashanu, the presenter of Gladiators? Aruga, aruga, aruga! So he had learned this Mishnah. Minayin la'aruga! Shehi shisha al shisha tefachim. How do we know that an aruga, which is a patch, it's the smallest kind of vegetable patch that you would need before you are able to plant different seeds? So from where do we know that it should be, at the very least, 6 by 6 tefachim, 6 by 6 handbreadths, shezorin b'socha chamisha zeronim, that you would be able to plant within it 5 different types of seeds without violating kilayim? If I'm not mistaken, that's what we're talking about. And the way in which we would do this is arba ba'arba ruchos. You would have 4 in each corner, ve'echad be'emsa, and 1 in the middle. And so you could plant 4 different kinds of seeds, and you would not violate kilayim, which is mixing different species together by planting them so close together. So the minimum size that you need to be able to do that without violating kilayim is 6 by 6 handbreadths. So the Mishnah is asking, how do we know this? Shene'emar, because it says in the book of Isaiah, chapter 61, verse 11, Ki cha'aretz totzi simcha uchagana zeru'eha tatzmiach. Because the verse says, for as the earth brings forth her growth, and as the garden causes its seeds to spring forth. So from here, the way in which they learn this verse, they understand that the different words help calculate the number of seeds. So totzi is 1, simcha is 2, uchagana zeru'eha is 3 and 4, and tatzmiach is 5. So you can get 5 seeds within this patch. Somehow that is the limud, that is the way in which they learn it. And all the Mishnah is telling us at the end here is zara lo ne'emar ela zeru'eha. It's telling us that it doesn't tell us zara, meaning 1 seed, but it says zeru'eha, meaning a plurality of seeds. And minimum plural number, last time I checked, is 2. So that is the way in which these clever people managed to ascertain the size of a vegetable patch where you can plant 5 different species without violating the laws of kilayim, of forbidden mixtures. Says the Mishnah in Mishnah Gimel, Minayin lepoletes shichvas zera bayom hashlishi shehi tameah. From where do we know that a woman who has a discharge, a seminal discharge, meaning she has been intimate with her husband, and the anything that would exit that area after they have been intimate would make her tameh, would make her impure, and that could go on for up to 3 days after a person has been intimate with their husband. And so the Mishnah is asking, how do we know that if a woman discharges semen within 3 days of having had intimate relations with her husband, that she would be tameh? That's the question that the Mishnah is asking. So this would mean that even if she went to the mikveh to purify herself, nonetheless, if she was to still have anything present itself within those 3 days, she could become tameh again, it would seem. So the source that the Mishnah brings is Shne'emar, in Shemot chapter 19, Heyu nechonim l'shloshes yamim. And again, this is not directly related to this particular halacha, but conceptually, it is being learnt out as a supporting evidence for the halacha in question. So in the same way that the Jewish people had to separate for 3 days before they received the Torah at Mount Sinai. Oh, how topical. So in the same way the Jewish people had to separate for 3 days in order to guarantee their purity when they stand at Mount Sinai, so too there's the idea then that a woman could become impure for up to 3 days after she has had intimate relations with her husband. Says the Mishnah, Menayin shemarchitzin es hamila bayom hashlishi shechal lihiyos b'Shabbos. How do we know that one who has been circumcised may be bathed on the third day after his bris milah, even if it's Shabbos. Because even though you're not necessarily supposed to be washing on Shabbos, but the third day, as we know from Avraham Avinu, the third day of healing after a bris milah is the most painful day, and so there would be a leniency that a child for up to those 3 days would be able to be washed in that area on Shabbos. And the support that we have for that, drum roll please, is when Abraham had his bris milah, Shne'emar in the book of Bereshith, Vayehi Vayom HaShlishi B'Yosam Koavim, and it was on the third day when they were. Oh no, it's not by Abraham Avinu. It was when they went and who was it? Reuven and Shimon went and massacred the city of Shechem, right? After they violated Dinah. So they had circumcised all their males, and after the third day when they were in pain, that was when they went and massacred. So we know that the third day is the time of the highest discomfort and pain. And so that is the support that is brought for the halacha that you can wash the child even on that day. Says the Mishnah, from where do we know that we would tie a strand of red wool onto the horns of the goat that would be sent away from the Beit HaMikdash on Yom Kippur? The Seir La'azazel would be thrown off a cliff, and it would achieve kapara, atonement for the whole Jewish people. So how do we know that a crimson, it says crimson colored strap there, is tied to the head of the goat? Because it says in the book of Isaiah, chapter 1, he is on top form today. It says in the book of Isaiah, if your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. And in fact, we do know, we're told that the strand would turn white miraculously. They would leave a strand of red wool in the Beis HaMikdash. They would send the goat away with a strand of red wool. And once the atonement had been achieved, we are taught that actually the strand in the Beis HaMikdash would miraculously turn white to indicate to the Jewish people that they had been atoned. Says the Mishnah Dalet, Minayin lesicha shehi kashasiya b'yom HaKippurim. From where do we know that anointing is considered the same as drinking on Yom Kippur, meaning it's one of the prohibited actions? We are not allowed to anoint ourselves, to rub oil or sun cream or whatever it is. Not supposed to do that on Yom Kippur. Afal pi she'ein raya l'davar, even though there's no proof per se in the Torah, zecher l'davar. There is, however, evidence of this, suggestion to this. Shne'emar, as it says in Tehillim, v'tavo kamayim b'kibor v'chashemin ba'atzmosav. And it came into his inward parts, like water, and like oil into his bones. There is an absorption that comes with rubbing oil onto a person's body, and this verse indicates that it is compared to the absorption of water into a person's body as well. So that concludes our 4 Mishnayos, which have very little to do with Maseches Shabbos, and now we move into some more comfortable territory. Looking again at what measurements, what amounts, what volumes are needed to carry on Shabbos before you are violating the malacha of Hotza'ah, before you are violating the prohibition of carrying things on Shabbos. They have to be a particular size. Let's have a look. Mishnah, hey, Hamotzi Eitzim, one who carries out wood on the Sabbath. How much wood do you have to carry out before you are carrying out too much? Says the Mishnah, Kedei levashel beit zakala, enough to be able to provide fuel to cook a light egg. Says the Mishnah, Tavlin, how much spices would you have to carry out before you are chayav? Kedei letabel beit zakala, enough to season a light egg. All the better for seasoning you with, my dear. Says the Mishnah, Mitzdarfin zet im zet, and these amounts would actually combine with each other. Says the Mishnah, Klipe egozim. What about nutshells? Klipe rimonim, and the shells or the peels of pomegranates. Istis ufua. Oh, those words, brilliant. You all get this, right? Woad and madder.
How much woad and madder? These seem to be plant extracts that we are talking about over here. So how much would you have to be carrying out before you are liable to bring a korban? Kedei, or before you are violating. Kedei litzboa bahen beged katan b'svacha. Enough to be able to dye a small piece of cloth the size of a hairnet. That is how much. That is the threshold at which that becomes an important amount to you that you could use. Says the Mishnah, Mei raglayim. Should you be tempted to carry urine out on Shabbos, how much would you have to be carrying before you violate? What about neser ubaris? Certain types of detergents. We have translated over here, baking soda and lye. Kumunya va'ashlag. Certain types of laundry products. How much would you have to be taking out? Now, these 5 things that we've just listed, these different detergents, it seems that they would actually use these regularly to wash their clothes. I've tried it. I can't say I recommend it all that much, but you know, that was what they had. I guess there's certain. I do recall seeing somewhere else that they would even use. What's it called? Dung. They would use manure and poo basically to clean clothes. Somehow, I don't know. Any chemists here? Can anyone explain how it would work? But nonetheless, it would seem that they had very interesting detergent methods to help getting their clothes washed. Anyway, how much would you need to carry out? Says the Mishnah, Kedei l'chabes bahen beged katan b'svacha. Enough to be able to wash a small piece of cloth the size of a hairnet. The savacha we've mentioned a couple of times. It was this piece, this hair piece that women would wear. So I guess that is the smallest kind of clothes size that you would want to be washing, and that is how much you need to be able to wash it. Rabbi Yehuda says, Kedei lahavir ala kesem, enough to be able to get rid of stains. I'm not quite sure what the exact difference between the 2 amounts is, but I would imagine it's not a tremendous amount. But nonetheless, the halacha, I believe, seems to follow the first position in the Mishnah. Says Mishnah Vav, Mishnah 6, where we're going to see that things that had greater importance or greater impact, they would have a smaller size before you are violating the malacha of Hutza'ah, of carrying out. So says the Mishnah, Pil Peles, how much pepper would you need to be taking out? And the answer is Kol Shehi, even the slightest amount, because even a small amount can ward off bad breath. And so that is how much the Mishnah says you would need to be taking out before you violate. V'itran, what about olive refuse? Okay, v'itran, which would have been used, it seems, as a kind of smelling salt to help alleviate migraines. The same amount, kol shehu, any amount you would be chayav. Minei besamim and minei matchos, when it comes to different kinds of spices, different kinds of metals, then kol shehain, again, it would be any amount, because you can make a bracha of borei minei besamim on any amount of spices, and any size piece of metal, it would seem, would come in handy if you needed to use it to discipline an animal, as I've got written in my notes over here. And so any amount would be suitable before you, would be required before you violate. Says the Mishnah, Me avnei hamizbeach or me afar hamizbeach. What about pieces that you are taking off the mizbeach, or taking away from the or the earth that you're taking off from the mizbeach? What about mekek sfarim, the worn out pieces of scrolls, the residue that you get from scrolls? Mekek mitpachosehen. Or what about the worn out covers for the scrolls? So the answer is kol shehen, any amount. Why? Shematzni and osan the ganzam, because any amount that would come off the mizbeach, any amount that would come off a scroll, even if it was just a cover for a scroll, you would need to put these all into geniza. And so any amount would be sufficient to violate the malacha of hotza'ah.
Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Af hamotzi mimishamshe avodah zara kol shehu. Even an amount, whatever quantity, if you were to carry out something that services avodah zara, that services idols, you would violate. Shneimar v'lo yidbak miyadcha me'uma min acherem. Let nothing that has been doomed stick to your hand. So that is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion over there for carrying out items of avodah zara. Says the Mishnah Zayin, Hamotzi kupas haruchlim, one who is carrying out a peddler's cart, which would have been, which would have had many distinct sections to carry many distinct things. So Hamotzi kupas haruchlim, one who takes out the peddler's cart, afal pi sheyesh ba minin harba, even though there are so many different things in there, so you would think, oh, maybe he's going to be chayav for each item that he's taken out. Says the Mishnah, you are only going to be chayav one time for carrying out this thing, even though you would have been tempted to think that you could be chayav many times for all of the different items that you have been responsible for transferring. Says the Mishnah, Zeroni Gina Pachos Mikagro Geres. What about if you are carrying out seeds, garden seeds? How many would you have to be taking out before that is a problem? The Mishnah says, Pachos mikagro geres. It would be less than the size of a dried fig. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira omer chamisha. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says you would have to be carrying out 5 seeds. Anyone remember why you would have to be carrying out 5 seeds? Because of what we were talking about earlier. That's the minimum amount that you need to be able to plant and aruga. That's the amount that you would need. We're really plugging for laughs on here. That's how much you would need to be able to plant that minimum size vegetable patch. And so that is the reason why Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says 5 seeds. But there are other types of seeds which are more chashuv, and you would typically plant less of them in one go. And so that is why we see the following in the Mishnah. Zera kishuin, when it comes to seeds that would grow cucumbers, then you would only need 2, shnayim. Zera deluyin, enough seeds to plant gourds, you would only need 2. Zera polomitzri, to plant Egyptian beans, shnayim, it would be 2 as well. Chayav chagav chay, a live locust, tahor, which is tahor, kol shehu, whatever size it is, you would be chayav. Mace, but if it was dead, then kagro geres, and it would need to be the size of a dried fig before you take it out. And it would seem, by the way, that live grasshoppers were children's playthings, and so that is why any size will do, I guess. Siporis kuramim, says the Mishnah, birds of the vineyards, which were they were only small birds, and they would eat up the insects in the barks of the trees. So, so how big would a small bird have to be before you are chayav? Ben chayav ben mesa, whether it's alive or whether it's dead, kol shehi, it would be any size of bird, and that is because shematzni and osan refuah, they were quite handy as some kind of medicine. I do not know how, but there we go. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Af hamotzi chagav chay tameh, even one who carries out a live unclean locust, kol shehu, they would be tummy, whatever the size, shematzniin oso lekatan nischok bo, because they could be held back and they could be put away so that children could play with them. All right, Mazel Tov on finishing chapter 9, and now we move on to chapter 10. Says chapter 10, we're moving away now from shiurim, from the size of how big things have to be, and we are going to be talking now about different domains, and we're going to be elaborating on a concept that we have kind of touched upon, which is where an objective usage for something, it would be used for purpose A, and some people would use it for purpose B. So let's take a little look at that. I really hope I'm not upsetting any of the people in the waiting room, but I don't want them to get scared. So let's just send them a quick message. Okay. Now, Mishnah Aleph in chapter 10. Hamatzniya lezera. Somebody who is storing something for planting. Uladugma, or they're storing it as a sample. Or they are storing it l'refuah, they're storing it for medicine. And they take it out on Shabbos. Chayav b'kol shehu. They will be chayav for whatever amount that they take it out for. B'chol adam. With regards to everybody, ein chayav alav ela kashira. They will only be chayav except in its standard measure. So everybody else is going to be chayav for the objective shiurim, sizes that we've been talking about. But if somebody had required it for purpose B, for a smaller size for themselves, then they would be chayav. Says the Mishnah, chazar v'hichniso, if they were to go back and carry it again, eino chayav ela k'shiura, then they would only be chayav for, so for example, he decides he's not going to use it for his subjective, personal purpose, but he is going to use it for the standard usage, then he's only going to be chayav if he has carried out the standard measurement size. That's Mishnah Aleph. Says Mishnah Base. Hamotzi ochlin, someone who carries out food, and asana ala iskupa, and he puts it on a stoop, or as it translates over here, a threshold. So we're talking about kind of like a front step in the front of someone's house. And if you remember, we've discussed different types of domains. You've got a public domain, you've got a private domain, and you have something kind of in between called the Carmelites. So this iskupa is this Carmelis type of territory, which means that you're not supposed to carry from a private domain to a Carmelis, and you're not supposed to carry from a public domain to a Carmelis, but you will be patur from a korban if you do. But you're not supposed to go from public to private or private to public via this Carmelis as well. So the Mishnah says, Hamotzi ochlin and the son ala skupa. You take food and you put it on this stoop. Ben shechazav v'hotzian, ben shehotzian acher. Whether you go and whether you subsequently carry it out to the street, or someone else comes and carries it out, patur, you're not going to be liable, because you have not done the whole act in one go, either because you put it down in this gray area in between, or because someone else has finished off the actual full transfer from public to private or private to public. So therefore you'll be patur. Kupashim leia pears. If you've got a basket that is full of fruits, and you put it on this porch, on the outer threshold, on this outer stoop, even if most of the peiros, the fruits, are actually in what is considered to be the public domain, patur, you're nonetheless going to be exempt until the entire basket has actually been taken out to the other domain. So even though we've been talking about, you take fruits and they have to be a particular size before you violate the malacha, because they are contained in this basket, they are, so to speak, they become an entity with the basket. So if the whole basket has not crossed the line, a bit like football, if the whole ball doesn't cross the line, then you're not going to be chayav for transferring domains. Says the Mishnah Gimel, Hamotzi ben b'yamin or ben b'smala, a person who carries out either with his right hand or with his left hand, b'toch chekor or ksefo, whether he carries it out in his lap or on his shoulder, chayav, you are going to be liable. Shekain masa b'nei kahas, because that is the way that the b'nei kahas, the descendants of kahas from the tribe of Levi, they were the ones who were responsible for carrying all the different parts of the Mishkan. So if they carried it in that way, and you carry it in that way, then you are going to be chayav for doing so on Shabbos. However, if you do it in a backhanded way, or baraglo, you carry it with your foot, or befiv, or you carry it with your mouth, or b'marak po. No, let's try that one again. Uvamar pako, or with your elbow, ba'azno, in your ear, ubasara, in your hair, ubapundasa, or you carry it in your belt, upia lamata, with the opening facing downwards, bein pundasa lachaluko, whether it was your belt for your shirt, ubisfas chaluko, whether it was in the hem of your shirt, b'minalo, whether it was in your shoe, b'sandalo, in your sandal, pater, you're going to be exempt. Why? Because this is not a normal way to carry things out. So if we do it kla'achar yad, in an unusual fashion, not the normal way, then you're not going to be chayav. Mishnah Dalet.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes, please.
Is that where we get the idea of a Shabbat belt from? Is that where it comes from? Carrying a key?
Not sure, because we're not carrying the key on the belt. It's part of our belt. I remember, oh gosh, this is a long time ago now, pre-Eruvin. But when you have it on your belt, it becomes part of the belt, doesn't it? So I'm not sure if we are, when we are carrying out the key, if we are, we're not carrying it. That's the point. These things are problematic that we're listing in the Mishnah. So when you put a key on your key belt, you're not carrying it, you're wearing it, because it's actually a link in your belt. I remember being taught that you have to have a connector connecting to the hole of the key on one side and the connector connecting to the key on the other side. So it's actually a link in the chain. Whereas if you were to connect the key belt to the other chink of the key belt and then have the key on there as well, then that wouldn't be okay. As I recall, you had to have it connected on both sides so that you are not, because otherwise, yes, then you would be carrying it in that way, I guess. So yeah, making it a link in the belt means that we are not carrying it at all. So yeah, you're probably spot on there, Jeff. Mishnah Dalet. Hamiskavein lahotzi lefanav uvalo laacharav. If he intended to carry out an object in front of him, and he ended up doing it, carrying it out behind him, it kind of lost its positioning while he was carrying it. So because he had the kavanah to do it one way and he ended up doing it another way, the Mishnah says patur, he's not going to be liable. Why is he not going to be liable? Because in order to violate the malacha, you have to have a mindset that you're going to be violating it. But if you don't have that specific intent and it changes, then you are not going to violate. Says the Mishnah though, la'acharav uvalo lefanav chayav. But if you had intended to carry it behind you, which is a more unusual way of carrying it, but then it went in front of you, which is a normal way of carrying it, it's a better way to carry it, then the Mishnah says you're going to be chayav. But emes amru, in truth, we say, ha'isha hacho geres basina bein milfaneha bein mila'achareha chayeves. If a woman was taking something out and it was in her apron, and her apron, I'm not quite sure what it would look like, but it would be just as usual for the apron to be moving in front of her as it would be for the apron to move behind her, because both of those would be usual and normal and frequent and common. Therefore, according to the Mishnah, you will be chayav if you were to carry it out in this apron, whether it was going before you or whether it was going after you. I'm just going to see if I can get a picture of this apron. No, can't. There we go. Rabbi Shimon Potet. Rabbi Shimon says, no, nothing doing. You would still be patur. Says the Mishnah, am I in the wrong place? Yes, I am. So because it was normal for it to go behind her as well. Rabbi Huda Omer af mekabli piskin. Even somebody who was carrying it in something you would receive notes in. And I do have a picture of this over here, and it looks like, when you got those tubes, like for a ketubah or for like a huge piece of paper, whatever it is, and you roll it up and you put it into those tubes. So the way that they would take these notes, these satchels or whatever, that would be like these tubes, and so when you're walking, it could swing all over you. So Rabbi Yehuda says, if you were carrying one of those, then you would be chayav, whether it was in front of you or whether it was behind you. We've got to speed up a little bit because we are running out of time. Mishnah Hey. A person who carries out a loaf of bread to the public domain, they are going to be chayav. This is a problem. He has picked up a loaf of bread and carried it from public to private, private to public, whichever way. However, says the Mishnah, if two people were holding it, paturin. If they were holding, let's say, a normal loaf of bread, then they will be patur, because one person is needed to carry it 2 people, bit unusual, not the normal way. Lo yachol echad lahotziu v'hotziu shnayim chayavim. But if it was such a long piece of bread that it needed 2 people to carry it, and indeed 2 people did carry it, then chayavim, then you would be chayav. Rabbi Shimon poter. Rabbi Shimon, however, says you are patur. Hamotzi ochlim pachos mikashir bekli. If you carry out an item of food which is smaller than the amount that we have been talking about to violate the malacha, and you're carrying it out in a vessel, patur afalakli, then you're going to be patur even for carrying out the utensil shehakli tfeilalo, because the utensil is part and parcel of this item. It's secondary to the food. And so according to the din in the Mishnah, you're going to be patur. Let's find where we are up to. Et hachai b'mitah. If you're carrying out something living on a mitah, on a, let's call it a stretcher, patur afal mitah, then you are patur even for the stretcher, shamita tfeilala, because the mitah is secondary to the body, and since the living person can walk by himself, therefore you're not going to be chayav. However, es hameis b'mitah, if you're going to be carrying a dead body which can't move itself, and you're carrying it on the stretcher, chayav, then you're going to be liable. V'chein kazayis min hameis. So too, if you're carrying out an olive bulk size of a dead person, of a corpse, the chazayis min an avela, or an olive size of an avela, which is a carcass, v'cha'adasha min asheret, or a lentil size of a dead creepy crawly, chayav. The Mishnah says you're going to be chayav. Rabbi Shimon poter. Rabbi Shimon says that you would be exempt. Says the Mishnah in Mishnah 6, Mishnah Vav, the last Mishnah of chapter 10. Hanotel tzipanav zobazov. If a person cuts his nails on Shabbos, or, by kind of breaking them off like that with their fingers, or b'shinav, or he bites it off, v'chein sa'ara, or he pulls out his hair, v'chein shfamo, or he plucks out a mustache hair, v'chein zkano, or beard hair, v'chein hagodeles, or braids. If the person pulls out her braids, v'chein hakocheles, or she paints her eyelids, v'chein hapokeses, or she puts rouge on her face. Rabbi Eliezer Mechayev, Rabbi Eliezer says you're going to be chayev. Chachamim osur mishum shavus. Chachamim say that it's going to be forbidden rabbinically because these things should not be done on the Sabbath. And then finally, hatolesh me'atzitz nakuv, a person who detaches something me'atzitz nakuv from a perforated pot, which is a flower pot that had a hole, which therefore, because it's got a hole and it's inside the ground, and so it's connected to the soil underneath. It's as if it's planted in the ground. So you're going to be chayev if you detach something from that, because it's like you've detached it from the ground. The she'eno nakuv. But if it was just its own flower pot on its own and it's completely isolated from other types of soil, then the din in the Mishnah is patur. You are going to be exempt. Rabbi Shimon poter bazel bazeh. However, Rabbi Shimon exempts in both cases. That concludes the 10th perek of Maseches Shabbos. Mazel tov on completing the 10th perek of Maseches Shabbos. And ladies and gentlemen, for all of you watching at home, that concludes this week's shiur. We will see you next week for more Mishnah Mastery. Take care and good night.